Hello and welcome back. If you've been following the series, you would have seen that this lovely little Featherweight 221K Centenary model here was converted to a jigsaw at some stage during its life. So someone had decided that it'd be a good conversion for a beautiful little classic sewing machine. I guess back in the day they may have been ultra common, and it might have been a good choice to convert to a saw, but in hindsight probably not such a good choice of machine. The plan was to resurrect this machine, but the problem was that it was missing a lot of parts, and fortunately I have a donor machine here which I've been pulling the parts out of. If you've seen the previous videos, I'll link the videos in down below for the previous 3 episodes, and also I'll link up to the last episode up in a card up here. I got to the point where this was nearly done, and if you take a look at the previous part, you'll see that when I tightened these 2 screws on the cap of this crank here, that the crank would tighten up on the cam here. So I was wondering whether maybe these parts here, these 2 parts, this cam here, it's a collar with 2 cams on it, I'll show you that close up in a second. I was wondering whether maybe that and this crank here were matched in the factory. And so one of the options I discussed in the video was to maybe put shims in to just provide a little bit of clearance on the top of this cap here on the crank. I don't think that's such a good idea. I've just had a bit of a think about it, and I thought maybe I should remove the matching part from the donor machine here and install that into this machine here, so we've got 2 good totally matching parts. Okay, I've got some news. I've figured it out actually. I've gone through the whole process of removing the top shaft, or partially removing it. I've made a video of it. I've put it in as a Patreon exclusive. So effectively what I did is I removed this cam here thinking that it was matched to the crank, and anyway removed this, and then I attached it to the crank while it was out of the machine, and it was free. And so, I mean, silly me, I should have really put a bit more thought into this. I thought it was binding on this because of mismatched parts, but it's not the case, and you may have figured it out already, but I had to go through the process to come to the conclusion. It's one of those things you live and learn. And anyway, so I attached the crank to both of these collars here with the cams, and they were both as free as anything. Just absolutely beautifully, running beautifully, no problem whatsoever, just out of the machine, just trying them on here. And then it occurred to me that more than likely the problem will be that the crank is misaligned in this direction. And if we have a look under here, we can see that exactly here. What the problem was that if we have a look at this alignment here, I haven't got this lower end of the crank attached here. That goes onto this surface here, and you can see that effectively, the crank was being pushed across like that, which, in this direction here, I don't want to push it too hard because it's cast iron, it's quite brittle, but that crank was being pushed across here too far, and it was causing the binding. Now, so I thought I'll just loosen this here and bring it right. The problem was this top linkage here was stopping me from bringing this bar along here, because this linkage here comes up to the top and links up to the top linkage here. So I had to loosen this one as well, and that allows me to bring both of the mechanisms across so that this just falls into place here nicely. And if I put the screw back in with the nut there, screw that up, I'll just do it finger tight there. And we'll see that, you know, we've got a little bit of movement there, and if I turn the wheel, it's as free as anything. So, you know, yeah, I probably should have thought about it sooner. But yeah, anyway, just as long as it's nice and free. So if I move it to the right there, it binds. And that's exactly what was happening. See, that's bound up there now. If I come across to the left, it's nice and free. So yeah, it's fairly obvious in hindsight, but yeah. And then this has to come across as well. This one here. In fact, I'm wondering whether it might be more to do, because if I bring this too far to the left here, the side of the feed, this feed lever here pushes on the side of the machine. So I might have to have these over to the right slightly. But what I might have to do is I might have to reposition this collar here slightly with the cams on it, just to go to the right slightly. I do have a certain amount of play there. You can see that this fork here has a certain amount of play in that direction, so I could probably come across just slightly. So I'll loosen that screw and push this across very slightly to leave enough leeway there for that fork crank there, and also for this one to centralize properly. So, you know, you can see I've taken all the linkage, the needle bar and the take-up assembly out. Luckily, it's not too difficult to get out and put back in. So, you know, I've wasted a little bit of time, but not much. It's not too bad. And, you know, these things happen sometimes. But anyway, and you live and learn. I mean, next time I'll know that to check this first. So I will go ahead and, as I say, I'll push this across a little bit further. Okay. So I've just moved this slightly in this direction here to allow enough play on that fork there, and I'll just tighten that screw back up there, so, and things are still nice and free there. And then if we come down here, we should be within Kiwi there. I just want to leave clearance on this side here, this bar here against the chassis there. In fact, I probably need to put the throat plate and the feed dogs on just to make sure that you know, everything is going to line up properly here before I go too far. Okay, just temporarily put this feed dog on here. And then throat plate here, just to make sure that, you know, everything's going to be lined up correctly. And the feed dogs are in the feed dog hole here, so that's lining things up pretty much for me here. And I've tightened, you know, this bearing here, these two bearings here, so that that's, you know, centralized in the throat plate hole there, the feed dogs. And then I'm just going to find the central position here and nip these screws here up, this one here to start with, down this end, and then make sure that I push this bearing in here to take up any slack, and then I can tighten this one here like that, and we should be, yeah, so that's nice and free there now. So next thing to do here is to install the lower shaft, and I still need to do some fine positioning of this little bush here, but let's get the parts on there and make a start. So that's, yeah, turning nice and freely there. It's good. So we've got a flat here for the hook there, and we've got a flat for the little balancing collar there, and then we've just got the gear for the lower shaft drive. Let's get a little bit of oil on here. Don't need much to start with, and then I'll be fully lubricating this machine before it is run. So I'll just go ahead and feed that through. We need the gear on there. Nice there. So this is the balancing collar here, and you'll see there that there's a little bit of a raised part here, but not on the other side, and the raised part goes up against the bearing here. So just slip that on there, and then push that right through, and then the hook will go on in here once we're ready to put that on. And then I need to make sure that this brass bearing goes through just a bit further there. That's needs to come through a bit more there. Now I just pushed that bearing in by hand previously, so I should be able to just push that a little bit further. I might have to give that a small tap. I don't want to use the brass drift because that's a brass bearing, and the drift may damage that. So I found this little, it's like a plastic screw. I think that should be soft enough to not damage this, and it doesn't need much of a push through here, so I'll give that a very light tap. See, that's moving in there. Now I can see where the grub screw used to be there, where it tightened up, so I can centralise that on there. I'll just make this a little bit easier on myself here. So that needs to go back in like so. Give that a press down. It might just need a bit of a hand there. I'll use my brass bush here, a brass driver, just to bring this down. Yep, that's got it. Needle bar just through from the bottom there, up through to here. Oh, I forgot this on the wrong way. Yeah, I've got that. I've got this on the wrong way here. It's hitting the tension release mechanism there. I'll just swing that around that way. It's not the first time I've done that. So sort of needle bar down is about there. Just roughly put the marks here. I'll time this up later. Right, Molly's turned up here to say hello. She hasn't been around for a little while. She has been around, she just doesn't come onto the workbench much anymore. So if you are missing Molly, she's getting old and she tends to sleep on her beanbag these days and keeps to herself a little bit more. But she's, sometimes comes in to see me, don't you? So the needle bar, you'll see 2 timing marks on the needle bar. You can probably, not see them at all now because of the cat. I just temporarily set the needle bar height previously. Sorry, I'm going to have cat fur all over me now. Now if I pull you can see the needle bar timing marks there, here and here. So we've got a the top timing mark, that is the bottom dead center mark. So that's where you want the needle bar to be when the machine's at bottom dead center. So that determines the provisional setting for the needle bar height, just so that you can get the timing done. So if I set the top mark to just come out from underneath the top needle bar bush there at bottom dead center, just a little bit too low, just come up just a fraction, that's it there. And the reason it's a sort of a provisional setting is because if this bush is not set correctly, you know, like if I had that out before, so, you know, I just sort of eyeballed where that came to as far as where the grub screw tightened up on it. If this is incorrectly set, well then your needle bar height is going to be incorrectly set, because the needle bar height is important in relation to the hook when it goes in here. It's not really important as far as this bush is concerned here, this bearing. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to turn the machine in operating direction to bring the lower timing mark up to the bottom of this bush here, and that gives you your needle bar rise, the amount of rise from the bottom dead center, and that rise is there so that the thread, I've done videos on this actually, the thread will form a loop in behind the needle, and that's the point at which you want the hook to come through. The point of the hook here, which is this pointy bit down here, you want that to come through right at the needle at that time, so that it picks up that loop of the thread of the back of the needle, the thread loop, and that's the hook timing. And then once you get the hook timing right, well then you set the needle bar height appropriately, so that you line up, you know, to a certain specification, the distance from the hook point here to the top of the needle eye, so that everything's in time there. So yeah, that's another subject really. I won't go through that in too much detail in this, but I've done other videos on that if you have a look through my videos there. That's pretty much ready to go there. We can start timing up the hook there now. I didn't specifically take any note as to which of these two grub screws tightens onto the flat on the shaft there. I'll have to go back and review my footage from my earlier videos. That's probably why I didn't take specific note. It's because I have that as a record, but I think it's the one that's closest to the hook, so I'll just go and have a quick look at that and confirm that I get that right. Okay, yep, definitely is this grub screw here that is closest to the hook point here. This one attaches to the flat on the shaft here. So start by putting that in there, and then I will just loosely tighten the grub screw, if that makes sense, just so that it doesn't move off the flat there. That's it. So I should have a little bit of movement there. I can still position that. We'll get a needle in first. I need to get the needle clamp assembly all back together there. Okay, so the trick to this is to put the thread guide into the needle clamp first, and there's a little hole here on the inside. There's a little cutout hole there. Just sit the clamp into it like that, and then just slide that up over the needle bar like that. We can put the little grub screw here. This is the little grub screw here. Screw that into the left side here. Just bring it around there. Just screw that that can be tightened there. That, and then put the needle set screw there. I'm just going to slightly loosen the needle bar because I want to square this up. It's not quite perpendicular there. So the flat surface of the needle shank here actually faces this direction here. So my little finger there is on the flat surface here, and you thread the needle from right to left. So, you know, a little bit different to, you know, what you'd call a standard machine, I guess. And then what we do is just need to be careful here that you know, the needle doesn't collide with any part of the metal work here. If it does, while you're setting this up, you should replace your needle before sewing. As long as you don't bend the needle when you're setting this up, it should be fine. And then, so what we'll do is bring the needle bar down to its lowest point there, turning in operating direction here, and then turn the machine so that the timing mark comes up to the bottom of the top needle bar bushing there. And if we get you a straight on look here, bring that up like that, and that is the point where the needle point here should be passing in behind the needle there, or in front of in this case. I can see here that there's too much clearance. I'll see if I can get you a look there. But there is too much clearance between the hook and the needle. If I just show you that. See, there's too much clearance there. That distance there should be about 0.1 of a millimetre. I'm not sure what that is in thousandths of an inch. But yeah, I guess you could work that out. 25.4 millimetres to the inch, if you want to work that out yourself. So we need to close that gap up just a fraction, but first of all I want to make sure that the lower bushing there, the bearing, is correctly positioned there. And yeah, so the hook is up against the bush there, the bearing. You can see that there. And I want to be able to bring the hook further in this direction. So this bearing needs to go in a little bit further. Normally you wouldn't need to worry about all this positioning of this bearing. It's just because that this machine had the bearing removed. So I'm just going to get that in a little bit further there. Okay, I think there will be plenty of clearance here now. So again, I'm bringing the needle down to bottom dead center, and then up to the timing mark up here, and then positioning the needle point just roughly at this stage opposite the needle. So a little trick here is to put a piece of paper in behind here so that you can see the distance between the needle and the hook point here. So effectively I'm really only just getting the distance here set to start with, because the timing's actually not done with these two screws here on the hook. The actual hook timing is set down here on this shaft here. You can see I've got that loose, so you know, this is the timing here, and what I'm doing at the moment is the actual clearance between the needle and the hook. So I'm not concerned about the timing too much at this stage, just the clearance here. Now I've just noticed there is a little mark on this shaft here. If I undo this screw here and slip that collar back a little bit, yeah, there is a little mark here. I think the right hand face of this counterbalance collar here should be at that mark there. So just tighten that up on the flat there at that point. The way I think this works is that this collar here and the hook are butted up against, you know, either side of the lower bearing here, and that stops the shaft from being able to move laterally. And then you can set your timing and your clearance of this gear here, just a little bit of clearance on that gear so that the teeth aren't you know, meshing too hard. So you just want just a slight amount of clearance on the teeth there. So this here will stop any end play on the shaft here. So because the hook is right up against the left hand side of this bearing here, the bearing actually determines the clearance between the hook point and the needle. So I'll set that for a standard size needle, around about a size 80, and that way there's a little bit of leeway each side there. In fact, you know, you probably want to give it a little bit more clearance between the needle and the hook point, just for when you install, if you do install a heavier needle, just will provide a little bit more clearance there. I've got this tight here. I've got the hook tight on the shaft here, and then I will use this bushing, so I've loosened the screw here, to adjust either way, just to get that clearance, that 0.1 millimeter clearance between the hook point and the needle. That's looking pretty good there. So again, we go turn in operating direction there until the bottom mark here comes up to the bottom of the bearing. At that point the hook should be just coming in behind the needle there. So the hook point should be in the center of the needle, down the center line of the needle. Just check the timing mark there. Yep, that looks pretty good there. So I'll go ahead and tighten these screws here. One there, and then this one here. And that is our timing set there. And the next thing I'd like to check is the actual needle bar height. I think the needle bar might be just a little bit too high. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that there, and just the angle of the camera might not show it. But the needle eye is a little bit too close to the hook, so I just need to drop that needle bar slightly. Just a fraction. I might just come up a fraction. I might have gone too far there actually. Just come up just a fraction there. Yeah, that's better. That's good there now. You don't want the needle to be too low either, because it will interfere with this. There's a needle guard here. You might be able to see here. I'll rest my tweezers on the needle guard. This long piece here, that's the needle guard, and that stops the needle from deflecting too far in towards the hook and, you know, potentially causing damage. So you don't want the needle guard or the needle to go too low, because the eye will actually drop in below the top surface of this needle guard, and that will affect the loop that's coming out of this needle eye, the thread loop coming out of there. Okay, so that's looking really good there now. Might as well put this back together here. Sort of starting to feel like I'm getting towards the end of this now, which is, it's been a bit of an epic video series, this one, but I've certainly enjoyed it. Now that will just screw, this is the stitch length and reverse lever. Screw that back into there. Yep, that's got it there. So tight there, one there. Probably should put the feed dog and the throat plate on here now. Just make sure that that feed mechanism is happy and it's not binding up anywhere. And then I also need to set the feed dog height and the feed dog forward to back relationship with the throat plate there. And that's done on those two linkages that are adjustable with the eccentric pins there. There's a little bit of overspray on this plate, but that's neither here nor there. You know, if I was getting really fussy, I'd clean that off. But when you're putting this plate on, you need to make sure that this little finger here is in the upright position. Fairly much anyway. It sits in this channel here when you put the plate on. Sits in the channel. Just have to make sure that that's in the channel there. You can see it just here. And then 2 screws for the throat plate. You can see there that the feed dog is too far to the front. I've got the stitch length on 0 and there's not enough clearance at the front, but there's a lot at the back, so that's adjusted by this linkage here. Yes, that linkage there. So position that full stitch length, and you can see there that there's as much clearance when the feed dogs come right to the front as there is at the rear there. So that's set fine there, that's good. Just holding the screwdriver there so that the screw doesn't turn, but I'll tighten up the nut there. Now this one down here, this linkage, that is the feed dog height adjustment. So if we have a look at the height of the feed dogs here, when they come up through the plate, they should be 1 tooth up through there. A tooth's height up protruding through the plate. That might be a little bit high. So I'll just adjust that here. Yeah, that's more like it there. And tighten that there. Yep. That's looking pretty good there. Now you can hear that rattle. I think most of that's the hook, a dry hook race. Get a bit of oil on there. There you go. Quieten it up heaps. I will go through and fully lubricate this machine. While I remember, better make sure I install the grub screw here for the bearing, lower bearing. Get that tightened up. And I'd just like to double check that I've got everything tight here. I might as well oil these parts here. Better put the presser foot bar back in its place. Should come down there, and we've got this here that goes this way. Okay, just get that down. We've got the presser foot tension spring there, the presser bar spring for the tension. And then we can put this adjuster back in there. Just install the presser foot. And then we make sure that the needle is down so that the feed dogs are down under the plate here. And we bring the presser foot down flat onto the throat plate there. And then we provide a little bit of movement here. Just bring this up off so that it's not sitting down on that bottom bearing there. Just need a little bit of clearance there. Just nipping that up a little bit, and then of course you want to make sure that the presser foot is lined up correctly so that the needle's not hitting it and that it's, you know, central over the throat plate hole there. And then I'm just winding a bit of tension down here, presser foot pressure there. And so to check that, just get a piece of thread here, lift the foot, needles down, feed dogs are right down under the plate. You put the thread in behind the needle and the presser foot down, and that should be clamping the thread there until you lift the foot. And you should have a little bit of play. Tighten that up there. And might as well oil while I'm down here. Needle bar, top bush there. Oil these linkages here. Take up linkages. I'll also, you know, before I go too far, I'll go and, you know, give this a good clean in here, try and get rid of some of the remnants of the sawdust and whatnot. So I'm not going to get too carried away. I'm not detailing the machine. Just give it a good clean. Get the hand wheel on there. I like to give the hand wheel some oil just down in the on the bearing there, and then slip the hand wheel on there. It should spin nice and freely there without turning the shaft, the main shaft. Maybe put the belt on and slip the, and then put the stop motion ring on here. Now this can go on two ways. So you should have these little divots here. They should be sticking outwards towards you when you put this on. But it can go two ways. It could go there, or it could go this way. And what this does is it allows you to undo the wheel so that this nut does not come completely off. The screw there stops against one of these lobes to stop the screw here from unscrewing completely. Yep, so that's freewheeling there now. Tighten that up, and now it's driving there. Install the faceplate here. So, and then let's get some grease. I've oiled the machine. I've just got these two oil points here. Let's not forget about these. One there, One there. Now I've got this old Singer grease here, which is not in very good condition. It's kind of, the tube's all split, but I can use this grease. You lubricate the motor with only the special Singer lubricant. I guess there's other lubricants that could do the trick, but in the manual it says that the lubricant will not start to flow at different temperatures. Let's have a look at the manual actually. Let's make sure my hands are clean there, reasonably clean. So use only Singer lubricant for lubricating the motor. Specially prepared non-flowing compound which is not affected by varying temperatures. It is the only lubricant which will positively lubricate the motor. Other lubricants including oil, Vaseline or ordinary grease must not be used for lubricating the motor as they are harmful for this purpose. Force lubricant through, at least once every 6 months thereafter. These grease tubes should be refilled with Singer electric motor lubricant. To do this, insert the tip of the lubricant tube into the hole of each of the grease tubes and force the lubricant through until both grease tubes are filled. Yeah, I can't do that with this one because the grease just spews out everywhere, but I will. I think I've got another tube of this. I've got a few tubes of this somewhere. I'll go ahead and do that. But in the meantime, I will use this lubricant here to lubricate the gears. Now I've done all the oiling, but I just need to get a little bit of lubricant onto these gears here. Just squeeze a little bit onto the screwdriver here. And just apply that to the teeth of this gear here, and that will transfer grease to the other gear as well. Little flakes of paint, is it? It's come off the, coming off this tube here. Oops, I think I got it all off there. Yeah, probably not such a good idea to use this grease like that. I have to be careful I don't get any paint chips in there. And then, pretty much just the same process really in the top here. Just on the that gear there. Just spread it on there. It's pretty good there. Okay, that's feeling pretty good. So the next thing to do is to wire the plug back on. I won't go through that in this video. It's basically just the reverse of how I took it off really. Just make sure that the cables go back in the same place. I'll go ahead and wire that back on. I'll test the foot controller and things like that. Righto, that's the plug and everything put back together. Foot controller's all good. And yeah, I feel like I'm really on the home straight now. So it's just a matter of putting the base back on. Just the one thumb nut there. The little rubber pads, they need replacing, but I don't have any replacements at this time. But that will be something I'll do down the track. This is actually a customer's machine. So he's happy to detail the machine as well, so I won't go through that at this stage. And he's hoping that his daughter will get into sewing as well, and this will be a machine that they can use. And what a lovely little machine to use. Finishing touch, the little fold out extension table here. So next thing is to wind a bobbin and test sew it, and then this epic 4-part series will be finished. So 4 point something 5, effectively a 5-part series. If you'd like to see the other video that is not available here on YouTube, that's the video I showed pulling the top shaft out. Turned out it was unnecessary. Take a look at patreon.com/sewing machines, and over there you can get pre-release videos, so I do early releases of videos over there, and also Patreon exclusive videos as well. So take a wee look over there, and it's, yeah, doesn't cost a lot. It's only, minimum $1 a month. Take a look at that, and as always, thank you very much to my patrons on Patreon. Your support is greatly appreciated, and of course thank you all on YouTube for watching. Hopefully you stuck with it for this epic restoration. I certainly enjoyed doing it, that's for sure. Just undo the stop motion clutch there. Engage bobbin winder. Motor sounds good. It's quite strong. It's good actually. I checked that. That was one of the first things I checked before I undertook this project, because the motors are very expensive to get repaired, if they can be repaired at all. But luckily the motor's good, so it hadn't been worn out cutting up pieces of wood, which is handy. So yeah, okay, I'll just install the bobbin case here. Now I haven't test sewn it. Hopefully everything's in order. Just make sure that tension is feeling right there. It's feeling pretty good there. So yeah, major restoration. So brought back from being a jigsaw or a mini table saw back to its original configuration as a sewing machine. So that's always good to see, and thankfully I had spare parts. Excuse dirty hands. I have been washing them. It's just, yeah, they probably need a really good scrub. Okay, first of all, see if we can pick up the bobbin thread there. Can't imagine that'll be any problem. Yep, it's all good there. There goes. Still one there. Yeah, I can't say it's the quietest featherweight I've ever heard. But it's sewing. Well, there we go, resurrected from a table saw, a jigsaw, whatever you like to call it, to a sewing machine. I've really enjoyed this project. I hope you have, and I hope you've learnt something and found it interesting. Yeah, I'll go ahead and put it back into its case. I've got its case here, so I'll put that in the outro. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and thanks again to my patrons. That's it for today, and that's it for the series. I will wrap up now, and we'll see you in the next video.